Y'all don't know what I went through.
Do you have a card in your hands right now?
Nike Talk was that place that spiraled what you enjoy now.
Anyone who brought a Kobe shoe in, I would clean it for free.
Man, Melo was better than a lot of people in the league.
I saw that. My favorite jersey is that one, the Barkley.
Kobe fours.
Oh yeah.
Episode 43. This is the Dandin and RJ Machismo podcast. This is Dandin. RJ Machismo will not be here today since he is diligently, being a healthcare worker. So we appreciate your service. So tonight we got a special guest. He has been, known well in the sneaker community, and he's done many projects and also been a part of many organizations and industries such as Soul Collector, East Bay, and many things that we'll talk about. So we got the homie Nick Engvall. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm good, man. Hey, it's an honor to have you on. It's been I've been a fan of your work for quite some time, since you writing like for Soul Collector. So I appreciate it's actually like I can't believe I have you on, kind of thing, and I read all your stuff.
I appreciate that, man. I'm just a regular dude, though, man.
Nah, that's all right though. I mean, it's like I guess I'm having a larger than life moment kind of thing right now. Like, oh my gosh, like I'm reading an article that you just posted back in like 2008, and now I'm having a conversation with you. So I appreciate your time tonight, Nick.
Yeah, of course, man. No problem at all.
All right, so just a small icebreaker with you, Nick. So just tell us more about yourself.
So I kind of lucked out and got into writing about sneakers right when blogs started in like 2007, 2008, and that started at like I had already started writing about sneakers, and then discovered like the Nice Kicks blog, and ended up like getting a job with Nice Kicks, which throughout the years has turned into I went from Nice Kicks to Soul Collector a couple years later. I got to start the East Bay blog for East Bay while I was a Soul Collector employee. Just all over the place with sneakers. I just love sneakers, and that kind of just started as a kid, really not being able to get them, and it was like just me and my brother drawing them, pretending those were the shoes we would make if we could make our own Nikes and our own Adidas and stuff. So I just really feel lucky that I got to like do all this crazy stuff just because I was super passionate about sneakers,
Yeah, I mean that's dope. I mean, I've noticed like a lot of my guests, like just they've always like draw like their sneakers, because a lot of us, especially back in the day, we couldn't afford to have like the cool sneakers that we would see on TV watching our favorite athletes. So we would always imagine, I want to just draw and doodle and make it. Hopefully one day now it's like an inspiration that I want to be part of the sneaker like culture, embrace it, be more, know more about it. So yeah, and we'll definitely talk about more about your storytelling piece. So a nice fact about you, Nick. I know you're a big AI Allen Iverson fan. The Hall of Famer. He's
Yep.
he's like the answer. He's one and only, one of a kind basketball NBA basketball player. So, what did he mean to you? As a fan, and for someone that you've have admired, and the impact of sneakers with Reebok. So, how in your words, like how was he a big impact to you?
I mean, for me, it was, he was more relatable than Michael Jordan, right? Like, I, of course, wanted to be like Mike. Everybody did, right? I think everybody was wearing some sort of Bulls, hat or T-shirt back then, if you could get one.
Yeah.
I know I got a Nike Jordan shirt from, like for like probably it must have been 90 or 91, but it was like it was from a Goodwill store. We didn't get like fancy like new shit back then. Sorry, I don't know if I could cuss,
No,
but
yeah, by all means, you can.
we didn't have that kind of money, and my family just like sneakers were just out of the question. So like anytime we got to get a little sense of, oh, this is what all the people that get to, like you say, you get to have the shoes that you watch your heroes are wearing on TV. And Michael was always that, but for me, like Iverson kind of was more he was more relatable because he was real, right? And you know I was listening to NWA in the late 80s, and I just didn't feel that with Michael Jordan in the same sense that when Iverson started becoming known to me in at Georgetown, like I had this whole kind of, I don't know, just like almost like epiphany of like, hey, this guy's, I'm 6'1", he's roughly 6 foot. It's like, wow, this guy's like, he was like the guy that I could relate to because he was going to say something that you didn't expect. He wasn't going to filter himself, but at the same time, it was also like he was the underdog. Like I just related to that because I was, our family was struggling. I was struggling to figure out who I was going to be growing up, and so when I kind of started paying attention to college hoops as a teenager, like he became like kind of like the guy, and it's not that I wasn't like a fan of all the other athletes. I look back at that era and just think there's so many people that I looked up to. But because Iverson was wearing baggy clothes, wearing his hat backwards, always had some jewelry on, like tattoos, all that stuff was stuff that I wanted to be, at that age and growing up. And I think too, like, because everyone else in the league seemed like they were like, almost like it's almost like a suit and tie type of players, right? I don't mean that in like they're wearing, a suit and tie, because all of them were at some point, but like the way that they played always felt like they were playing for other people. And Iverson always felt like he was like, fuck it, if you don't let me play here, I'm going to go play in the neighborhood with my friends. And that to me was just like the attitude that I had towards life and the attitude that I like looked up to. But also I think too, I think like with Reebok, it was a little bit more attainable in a lot of ways. It was just I didn't have money for Jordans. Eventually I got I think my first kind of like cool pair of shoes was, like some Nike Air Lambastes, which is like the LWP
Nice.
low tops.
Yeah.
But that was like because I worked 2 jobs throughout the summer to save up for it. I got the matching black socks with the royal swoosh. I thought I was the shit, like but that was still like, a lot more money than I could have picked up a pair of Reeboks for. And as that all kind of started to play out, Iverson's like, it was like the closest I could get to Jordan's in a lot of ways was to wear the questions. And I just became obsessed with the questions, from the first pair that I got probably in 97, because I didn't get them right away. It was one of those things where I had to save up for it. But after that, it just like, it was like everything about him became like more and more what I admired in a human being. Right. And I would say even further than just like the like no fucks given attitude. I remember specifically he was on he did an interview with Stephen A. Smith and started talking about his relationship with his mom, and he started crying. And to me, that was like, holy shit, this guy's like superhero to me now, because he's as like, we all have that. No matter how much the teenage me was like, I'm fucking tough as nails and you're never gonna fuck with me. Like we all have that, And I think like parallel to that, this is why I became a huge Tupac fan and like started writing poetry because of Tupac. And like both of these guys really shaped and guided like a kind of just had simultaneous paths, but I just kind of found myself in the middle of like, wow, it's like, it's poetry, it's music, it's fighting for the rights of people with Tupac, it's being a baller, but like maybe not the best that's ever going to do it, but definitely the guy that will beat the best guy at least once or twice, right? Like people remember him for being able to beat the best guy, not being the best guy, but being the guy that like crosses over Michael, right? Like that's
Hmm.
kind of the way it was like, I'm never going to have the physical ability to play basketball to that level, but seeing him do those things, being like, you know, small for the NBA, and like, you know, me looking at that as like, oh shit, he's about my size. Like maybe I could, you know, do something like this or whatever. It just was, you know, kind of compounding. So it just became like the natural thing for me to like be into, you know, Reeboks. And as I became more of a fan of him and started collecting more shoes, as I got into like working more and having, you know, quote real jobs, I just always default to Iverson stuff. You know, like I bought all that baggy ass gear back in the day when I could afford it, and like, you know, um, it's funny because like probably, I'm sure people have seen that kid in the stands that's got the like drawn on
Yeah.
Iverson thing. And like, I swear, like probably 20 times in my life, people have genuinely asked me if that was me as a kid. And I was like, this kid is like, you know, I don't know how old, probably like 10 years old or
Yeah.
something. Like I'm way older than that, but like I appreciate that you think that I was, you know, that passionate or whatever about
Yeah.
Iverson. So, but yeah, man, that's pretty much how it came to be with Iverson.
Yeah, I mean, I think Iverson was one of a kind. I'm from Washington D.C. I've seen him play on TV, and for him to have not having a father figure, and when I saw him go to Georgetown, which was a blessing, for him having a relationship with John Thompson, where
Yep.
nobody, he was like fucking up. He was, he had a D1, a full scholarship ride to a big school for football. Nobody want to take him because he had all these court cases, and um it was well publicized with his mom begged John Thompson, is like, hey, like, can you please, I'm begging you, please take my son, save his life. And when I'll always remember when he made that Hall of Fame speech, when he was just tearing up, thank you, coach, for saving my life.
Yep.
And that was so genuine, and one of the realest, like, speeches that I've ever, like, watched. And for him, when he got to the pros, he had Larry Brown, and also never gave up on him. Like, he had coaches that, they weren't as good as like Larry Brown, but always stuck with him no matter what. And I wish like he would have won a championship. He
Yeah.
got that one win against the 0-1 Lakers, but I think he had a very storied career. Could have been better, it's just like any other NBA player. But I think, like I said, he was like one of the guys that we root for because he was an underdog. Not many people knew that he played hurt.
Yeah.
He's banged up all the time. He never complained about like taking a day off because he never knew what he was going through like every day. So like I
Yeah.
think, yeah,
I was gonna say, and I think that's a good point too. Like I just, you know, he just wears his heart on his sleeve, right? Like he's
hmm
out there every day. You see every ounce of him on the court and off the court. You know,
yeah,
like you know, the whole practice rant, right? Like people still to this day don't realize that like he just lost his best friend,
yep,
and he's in there getting grilled by reporters.
hmm
Everybody under, you know, like nobody's going to be able to sit there in that pressure thinking about losing their best friend and deal with some dumb questions, you know?
yeah, yeah,
So I, I think like it's really interesting. And like that to me is also like a big part of it is just like, you know, it's really tough because, you know, social media now is a little bit different, right? We all have to kind of, you know, make sure that the boss isn't watching or, you know,
hmm
whatever it is. And we've got to be a little bit different than back then.
hmm
And it's not that that's a bad thing. I think it's actually probably helpful for a lot of people to like have to even think about that, right? Because like at 17 or 18, I wouldn't have thought of that stuff. Like I needed
yeah,
people to like put me in place and check me and say, yo, like don't, you know, don't lose this over your emotions.
exactly,
But also like, you know, I related to him always just you can like if you knew me really well, like you just know my mood on my face at all times. Like it's just if I'm in a bad mood, if something's going wrong, if I'm trying to like bullshit my way through it, it just doesn't happen. Like you see it, you understand like that. Hey, you know, I'm not going to be able to like, you know, just push my way through this and be like okay for any reason. It's like you're gonna see that I'm upset or that like I don't want to be doing something or that I'm pissed off at somebody or whatever. And I just related to that because you just didn't have that with a lot of people, right? Like in hindsight, we see that, the Bulls documentary, the Last Dance, like you got to see Michael be in that way, but we didn't know that watching him originally because they were kind of painting this picture of like this is like, Superman, he's flying through the air and like he's just hanging out, with Spike Lee making commercials in the off season and all this stuff. But as we get older and further away from it, you start to hear all these stories about like MJ kind of being a dick to people and, like making some really like questionable decisions.
Yeah.
And not that he doesn't deserve to do that too. Like I don't think anybody should be held to the crazy standards that athletes are held to anyway.
Yeah.
But like to see Iverson kind of just go through it and be like, the face of the change for the NBA in a sense, right? With like the dress code bullshit and all of the, the tattoos and stuff, like all these guys that are in the league now would have had to deal with so much more if David Stern didn't just pick on AI for years, and
Yeah.
to your point, right? Like if he doesn't have like Coach Brown or Coach Thompson, he's probably going to lose it on one of these guys that's telling
Exactly.
him how to dress or telling him not to
Exactly.
have cornrows or whatever it is. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, that's dope. So like sneaker wise, like people were frowning on with Reebok, right? Because Nike and Jordan Brand, they were so dominant back in mid '90s or early '90s, especially when Iverson was entering the NBA. Uh, and a lot of people weren't, they weren't very fond of the questions, which to this day is almost equivalent, in my opinion, like the Jordan 1, because there's so many retros colorways. There's even a low top,
yep,
and there's so many collaborations. They have the hot ones, and they have the Bubba Chucks, and so on and so forth. So yeah, to a point, like he also gravitated that, with the culture in the hip hop music. He was one of the first athletes that had Jadakiss as a regular on his Reebok commercials. Not many people knew who Jadakiss was, and all he had, it was like a maybe like a 2-minute commercial, but it was
yep.
so cool. Like like the creative process and just like the lyrics too. It was like so catchy. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
was like, man, I want to get a pair of Answer fours now after like getting that. It gravitates, to our like generation.
Yeah, definitely, man. I think too, like during that era, Reebok, uh, you know, I'm a big fan of the brand. I'm a big fan of a lot of the stuff that they've done through the years, but they had the opportunity to easily beat Nike at the game, right?
Hmm.
They were ahead of Nike in the 80s with all the aerobic stuff and the fitness stuff. You had the Pump Fury in 94 that like kind of like, surprised everybody and, ended up being the shoe of the year for running. But with basketball in the late 90s and early 2000s, they had not only did they have Iverson, who, there's a couple of years there like where MJ's out of the league, right? So like the league and the sneaker world is kind of looking like who's the next, right?
Hmm.
And it was like, well, obviously Iverson is it if things were played right. Um, but I think they also made like a lot of poor decisions like from the top where they had deals with a little bit later on they have deals with Jay-Z, they have deals with 50 Cent, like all the stuff in the early 2000s. They owned the hip hop collaborations for that era, and they really botched it. They really kind of fumbled the opportunity to really like take on. Granted, Nike was coming into their own, and like you said, they were like all over the place. Everybody's wearing them, but Reebok was such a powerhouse that like throughout a lot of those years, I still think that they could have easily taken back that top spot had they just like kind of maybe I don't know what was missing, but like they just made some decisions and had like different CEOs come in. It was a weird kind of situation, and now it's fast forward 15, 20 years, and they're basically have done the same thing, and now it's like they're going to get sold, or they just did get sold, and
From
all that
Adidas. Yeah.
stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, right? Like you see like technology, like, brands merging. So there's Ultra Boost now on a question, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
to our advantage is more. It's nicer cushioning compared to a DMX, Hexalite
Yeah.
cushioning. Um, I mean, it's a nice brand collab, and I guess at that time, I mean, they bought how much they bought it for like 2 billion, which is
Yeah.
considered like cheap in today's market for the sneaker industry. So, and Adidas is still a big global brand in Europe, based
Yep.
on there. So it's crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So next question for you, Nick. So you've been with many companies such as StockX, Soul Collector, Sneakerpedia, and Eastbay. So with you being part of those companies, how important is providing ideas and concept through storytelling?
I mean, it's the main purpose, right? I think that you have to look at how you're either educating or entertaining people when you're creating content. And I am lucky to have kind of worked in a bunch of different places where there's plenty of ways you can do that. A podcast is a great way to do it. You get to really know people on a podcast, and the people that are listening can be way more emotionally invested in the conversation. um Depending on where you're at creating content, you can write long form stuff and kind of people get to feel your emotion through that.
Hmm.
um but I worked for Complex, like I was there right when Complex sneakers started. Like I signed up for Complex sneakers in Instagram and Twitter accounts because like I was managing the sneakers channel at that time. And back then we did a bunch of lists. We did all the like click through lists. So like you would come in and you would look through like 100 of the best Air Force Ones. And that's another way to tell stories. It's just that people don't think of it as a story because it's broken down into a list. But if you were to write a book, for instance, you're still going to do the same type of thing, right? If I wrote a book about Air Force Ones, I would literally start with the white on whites and I would work my way through 100 or so different colorways and crank out a big ass coffee table book.
Yeah.
But like with the internet, you can do that through video or through blog content, all that stuff. So um I think that it's the main reason we get invested into any of these athletes or celebrities or other human beings in general, right? Like the more you get to know people, the more you want to be a part of their life or you want to support them. Or it's just like binging on Netflix or YouTube or whatever it is
Hmm.
that's your thing. And honestly, like with sneakers, I've just been really lucky to be kind of at the front of all this stuff. From like I was a part of 4 guys that were hired, the very first people that Nice Kicks hired for their blog. um the others would be George Keel, Peter Sim, and Greg Grovey. So like this is 2007 or so. Maybe 2008, I can't remember, but it's a long time ago. And then like with Soul Collector, like I went to Soul Collector. Obviously Soul Collector was kind of the pinnacle for sneakerheads back in the day because it was like a magazine, right?
Hmm.
And when I was there, i didn't I didn't get to contribute. I chose not to contribute to the magazine as much because I started seeing that there's opportunity for the blog stuff to really become something bigger. And East Bay is headquartered up in Wisconsin. Nobody at Soul Collector wanted to go up to Wisconsin because it's cold as hell and it's far away. Like you literally have to take a flight to Minneapolis and then you take a little tiny 20-seater plane to get to Wausau, and it's just like a tiny town in the middle of Wisconsin. And I was like, I'll go. They've got to have all the catalogs. Like, I just want to go look through all the catalogs and see all the things that I missed out on as a kid. So, just being there and being able to see all that and like kind of taking, sounds weird now because every company has a blog, but like back then, East Bay didn't even have a blog. They didn't have a place to even put their like pictures. So the only pictures they really created were for the catalogs.
Hmm.
And for the website, right, you still had the like 5 angles or whatever that they were doing back in the day. But I was looking at it like, well, the best stories for Soul Collector are coming from an East Bay catalog. It's just that somebody has to tell the actual story instead of this is what it's made of, this is the materials, this is how much it weighs, this is how much it costs. Because those things are important, but like I'm not emotionally invested in that particular information. I'm emotionally invested to hear that you played in whatever pair of shoes in 1996 and you just wore them to the ground, and now we can talk about the reissue retro of that product, and then now we can say, oh, that's the shoe that Dannon talked about, or oh, that's the shoe that so and so wore. And that's the thing that I think, I kind of like lucked out in a lot of ways, because the timing for all that stuff, people hadn't really started doing that, because we didn't have, like I said, I signed, after the East Bay stuff, I ended up going to Complex and moving to New York. And, even then you didn't have things separated. You didn't have like a Complex sneakers as its own thing. Now everything is separate. It's like, if you're passionate about something, even the big brands like Complex or Bleacher Report or Vice are doing stories about sneakers. And, that back in the day, that just didn't exist because you didn't even have social media. So it was like, MySpace, and like Twitter was barely out there, and not too many people, like were actually active in the sneaker world on Twitter for the first, 2-3 years. And then now, years down the road, I mean, most of what happens in sneakers happens on Twitter. It's crazy. So, but to your question, I think like just the way that I was able to like kind of land in those positions, each time, like I get really excited about new things. So each time it's like a new challenge, right? Like I, go to Nice Kicks. I'm the first team at Nice Kicks, right? Like we kind of figure out how to do blogging as a team and as a group. And then, at Soul Collector, not only like, doing the forum stuff, which was like the reason why everybody loved Soul Collector, online back in the day, but Soul Collector blog was kind of low key compared to some of the other places. So we were like starting something new to bring it together. Even when I went to, Complex and getting to like really like elevate Complex sneakers on its own. Beyond that, I worked at Finish Line, like got to build like really like the best sneaker blog for a retailer straight from the ground up. We did it right. We had a team of contributors, we had freelancers, all that stuff. And without me being just like ready to move to the next challenge, the stories kind of, you kind of have to like be in that right place to make those stories relevant to whoever you're writing for or creating for, whether that's yourself or, somebody else's big business or something like that.
So like when you were with Finish Line, Nick, because I've known, because I was like a subscriber to, like, you get freebie stuff, right? Like subscribe to our our newsletter. So I've noticed, I think now I've looked back, Finish Line had like a little blog, like it's kind of like a Soul Collector mini magazine, right? Were you involved with that project?
No. So when I was there, so Finish Line is probably like 2014,
okay,
for me, something like that.
Okay.
They had a magazine in like the late 90s.
Okay.
They had a Finish Line magazine, and then they had a magazine called Spike, which is their company logo, the little jumping character's name, Spike. But they got rid of that as like everything kind of switched to the internet. So when we built the blog out, none of those things really happened. There was some things where we did some print stuff for like specific, maybe a specific model coming out or something, or, we would work with the stores to do things. But they actually, one of the projects that I was really excited to see happen, it actually came out afterwards. And, my buddy Brandon Edler kind of was like, headed up that project, but like they actually did like a full kind of like lookbook style catalog, probably around 2015 or so. And it was with, I think with Adidas Originals or something.
Okay.
And so like they don't really do print stuff very often. I'll never forget, like we did a thing called the Fundamentals, where we got to bring a bunch of creators to New York City to hoop. So we had like Chris from Wear Testers, Nightwing, Fomer Simpson, Trey and Jay Jones. I forget what their channel was called back in the day. We had Dre Baldwin, who's a hooper, kind of motivational speaker dude now. It was just like this group of YouTube creators that I think maybe Jacques Slade was involved in some of that, but like we basically, that was the very first time that we kind of managed the creative process from the digital side, where Finish Line at that time was still kind of like separate, right? There was digital and there was stores. So everybody that worked on the stuff you would see in a store when you'd walk in would be on a different team than who I would work with.
Oh, okay.
But that project and like working through for a year or two on like trying to get people to let the digital team, who was, you know, not to, I don't mean in a disrespectful way, but we were all kind of young and in the footwear stuff, right? We were all excited about sneakers. So we were in touch with the creators that were out there already. And a lot of those guys were my friends from previous projects. So we did get to a point where we got to actually put like, you know, I don't use the term like normally, but like influencers, right? Like these people that are like legit, like, you know, making YouTube videos and have tens of thousands of views or hundreds of thousands of views. We took photos from that photo shoot and from other projects that we did, and actually went from like campaigns that you would see on the front page of finishline.com to like, now you can see, you know, Fomer Simpson on a big wall poster in any Finish Line in the country, or, you know, maybe like 100 Finish Line stores or something. So that was like a really cool thing for me too, because it was just a challenge. Like I had never done any of that stuff, and then, you know, never kind of organized all that stuff. So it really just was, you know, it was, again, going back to that storytelling aspect of like, it just has to be relevant to the consumer. So if it was relevant to me, if I saw Foamer when I on the wall when I walk into a Finish Line and I get excited, then I know, you know, thousands of other people will, right?
Yeah.
And to me, it was like you see it now, right? You see like, you still see brands that do photo shoots with just, you know, models that they hire.
Yeah.
But like, if you hired somebody to be that model that's already a known person in the space you're trying to be creative in, that's like win-win for everybody, right? Because now you've got somebody that's recognizable, somebody that's excited about the same, whatever that passion is, in this case sneakers. It's just like, it gets everybody more and more excited, so you get to do more stuff. And I think that, you know, to me is just, it's you know, where everything kind of came from, you know, that like print side. And I think print can still be totally successful, right? Hypebeast still does a magazine, you know, High Snobody does a magazine, maybe not all the time, but there's plenty of people that do magazines well, and Eastbay still sends out catalogs every month.
I
People,
still get one.
yeah, me too. You know, and I still love it. I don't.
Yeah.
There's no shoes in there that will probably buy at this point, you know, but I still love getting it and flipping through it and seeing all the stuff that's coming out. So
yeah, it was so dope. Yeah, I mean, especially like every month you get like an East Bay catalog, and you get so excited, like, oh man, like I saw Scottie Pippen wear these Air More Up Tempos.
Yeah.
Oh, they're $149.99. I can never afford it.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but I know they're size 8 through 13 through the East Bay catalog.
Yep.
You know, that kind of thing. So I mean, those are cool. Those are like great memories, and you know, good storytelling too, that
Yeah.
you were telling. So thanks for sharing for that. So next question for you, Nick. In your opinion, do you think that StockX is a great asset in today's sneaker community?
It's kind of a tough one, because, you know, I was not somebody who ever, I mean, I still don't really buy shoes for resale. There's only a handful of shoes I've ever paid more than retail for, and that's basically because they're just shoes that don't exist, for, you know, soul collector collaborations that I don't have, or you know, a shoe that was maybe limited when it came out originally, and I just want it to have it for collector purposes, not necessarily to wear all the time. But I think the platform itself, I don't know that it's bad, but I think it's the natural progression of what sneakers was becoming, right? You know, if you go back to like 2012, 2013, 2014, when Jordans were like really hot for a while, right? Like the black cement fours came out, and they were, you know, I'd never had a chance to get them, but I was making good money then. um I ended up buying like 4 or 5 pairs for myself, and like had them, you know, like I wore them a ton, you know, like I wore them walking around New York City for the time that I lived there, and you know, literally just burned through them. But like that was the first time that I ever kind of really saw like resellers selling a new shoe, right? To me, resellers prior to that was more about like the collectible aspect of shoes. And that was always a thing, right? Like it wasn't like Jordan 1s weren't being resold, you know, at any point. It's just that now there's a bunch of platforms that everybody on the internet can see, hey, here's where they are. So um you know, I definitely had a little bit of hesitation when I took the job at StockX. So I went there in 2016 now, and I was employee number 9. So there was no platform, right? It like I think it might have just launched the website, um, but I was freelancing for them before. You know, I'd known Josh through doing stories with him at Complex and at Finish Line. So like when he kind of you know, started the whole project with Dan Gilbert's team in Detroit, you know, he reached out and was like, hey, is there you know, is there any way you could be a part of this? Like originally the conversation was about him buying sneaker history from me, which, you know, that isn't really something I would ever really want to do, especially to a company like that. I just, you know, if I was going to ever get rid of sneaker history, it would be like somebody in the community already, right? It would be somebody that knows exactly what we do this for. It's not about money. It's not about like me making a bunch of money to like, you know, be a cook group or anything like that. Like no disrespect to that. It's just like, you know, to me, it's about the people, and it's about connecting people. It's about you coming in and being able to meet people and be on the podcast, and me be on the podcast and all that stuff. So with StockX, I was definitely hesitant to be a part of it because I didn't really, you know, want the resale thing to be like this blown up thing. But it was also already happening, you know, like by the time someone, you know, this might sound bad to some people, but by the time someone like Dan Gilbert is thinking about a resale business, the game is already fucked, if that's how you want to look at it, right? To me, it will never be fucked. The sneakers will never be dead. Sneakers will never be like, you know, ruined from anything. You just adapt. If you don't want to be a part of it, that's totally cool. If you don't want to, like, you know, even now, if you don't want to sit there and take an L on sneakers every day, that's totally cool. I don't blame you at all. But like for me, even when I get frustrated by something like StockX or, you know, eBay, like, I mean, back in the day, you get outbid at the last minute on everything, God. You know, yeah. And then even on the forums, when you would buy and sell, you'd get screwed over by people on the forums, and you just didn't have a good platform. So I'm going to be here no matter what. Like, I just love connecting with people based on sneakers and having these conversations. So with StockX, yeah, I think that it brought in a lot of people to, you know, make a quick buck off of shoes. But I also think that a lot of those people become passionate about sneakers and become friends with a lot of the people that probably 5-10 years ago were like, fuck resellers. So, you know, to me, it's just a part of it. We would have gotten there anyway. You know, I think that eBay was already, you know, it was problematic, right? Like I've only been, you know, knock on wood, I've only been like ripped off or not. I didn't even really get ripped off. I've only been like sent a fake pair of shoes one time. And that was on eBay years and years and years ago. It was the black patent leather ones from, you know, whatever that was, 01 or whatever. And I reached out to the person right away, because as soon as I opened the box, I was like, oh, these are janky. Like, just like, I'm not keeping these. I messaged back, and it was like a woman that was selling them for her kid. And she was like, oh, my son just wanted me to get rid of them because they're not his size, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, just so you know, these are super fake. I don't want to like cause you a bunch of problems, but I'm going to need a refund and I'll send them back to you. I sent them back. She refunded my money. I've been really lucky to not, have a problem with that kind of stuff. But that was happening to a lot of people, you know, for a long time. So StockX was providing a service that I think was missing in the footwear game in the industry. And I think that, you know, the nature of the bid and ask that StockX provides definitely gives a more accurate, for the people that pay attention, definitely gives a more accurate view of what pricing really is. It's really hard to dig through eBay, and most people are never going to spend the time, right? Like you and I, most of the guys in the Discord and Sneaker History Discord will spend hours a day on eBay looking for random things. But that's also why it doesn't really matter if StockX is doing its thing over here, because like I'm not looking for shoes that are on StockX. I'm looking for shoes that, like you said, I'm looking for that, obscure Pippin that I saw, the colorway that came out 15 years ago or something. And even when I'm buying new shoes, I'm not really trying to buy like the hype stuff. It's just not in my nature. Like, it's nice. Don't get me wrong. Like, if I got a pair of, I don't know, off-white dunks or whatever, I would love to trade that for something that I actually want to wear. But so I'll try to get them, but I'm not going to go pay and resell for them just because it's not my thing. And that's what I love about what StockX has brought to the game, and not just StockX, right? GOAT has done a hell of a job of, I think, GOAT's magazine, right? Like they do the greatest magazine twice a year. That is so, there's such a different vibe with GOAT compared to StockX. StockX is like super transactional, super about the money. And GOAT, like even the pictures that GOAT takes is like, they're like nice their regular pictures are really nicely done compared to like the 360s that StockX does.
Yeah.
And it's just different lanes, they're just picking different lanes. And to me, that it's like the price guide aspect of it is so much easier to see on StockX, that's like the biggest win for the sneaker community, right? It's not like you have to play by those prices or those rules. We all know that, like, you could look at a price on StockX and then you could walk into a Flight Club store or whatever resale store. There's stores everywhere. Actually, one of my friends, Miles, called me today and was like, "Oh, I went to Del Amo and there's 4 resale shops in the mall now."
Yeah.
And I'm like, so like this was going to happen anyway, and now it's happening in person, right? So people, instead of, if you buy online and you flip it on StockX, you're not making a whole lot of money in most cases, right? But now these retail stores can sell a little bit more because people don't have the time or energy to chase that shoe right at that moment. So if you walk into a store and they have something that was like 6 months old or 3 months old, and it's only 10 or 20% more than retail, maybe you pull the trigger on it. I think it's interesting. And I think it's, I guess, to specifically answer your question, I think that StockX was bound to happen whether StockX existed or not, right? So I love and hate many different things about both those things. My experience there, what had its ups and downs, but I met my girlfriend. We've been together for going on 5 years, like, so that was great. But like, I didn't stick it out, and I'm not waiting for options and going public and all the stuff like a lot of my friends are with StockX now. So but it also created a whole different, a whole secondary market world for people, right? Like, we've got guys in the Discord that are working for other, platforms that, like, that opportunity doesn't exist unless you got StockX that kind of forges the way, or GOAT that kind of forges the way. And I think that's kind of cool. So
yeah, I mean, it brings a lot of opportunities, and we'll talk more about Discord and sneaker history later on. Yeah, I mean, to me, like, I think eBay is still like king of,
yeah,
because like you were saying, Goat and StockX, they'll still have like, oh, Pollen Jordan ones, but if you're like one of the savvy, like sneaker hobbyist or collector, I always wanted like a pair of, like, for example, old love new love pack. I want to know like how
yeah,
much I can get them for, for the price that I'm paying for like a resale for a Pollen one. I can get like a slightly used pair for 250, 300 with the sliding box, which is awesome.
Yep.
And even though those are mids, it's like a two for the price of one kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and it's like with eBay, like it's whatever, anything that you're thinking about. Like even you have like an epiphany, or like you're talking something random. Like I think I was reading like through the sneaker Discord, someone was talking about the Indestructs. Oh, like I saw these air worms, like someone was selling them for like 200.
Yeah.
Like, oh snap, like the Indestructs, and then like we started talking about Indestructs, and I remember like Alonzo Mourning was wearing the with the I think it was like the Rock and Jock, the MTV like celebrity basketball.
Yep.
I mean, that shows my age, like how long I've been like watching that kind of like sneakers like with celebrities. So I mean, those things are nostalgic. Like the nostalgic feeling. I'm more for the nostalgic. Even though like people are like crapping about like quality and like, oh, it's like uncomfortable, and it to me it's the nostalgic feeling that like you were saying, like when I was a kid I always wanted these. I always wondered what they felt like owning a pair.
Yep.
So it has this like good and bad parts about like just sneaker collecting. The owning part is the nice piece, but there's also this advantages. Sometimes like quality is always number one, and the scarcity, like how available are they, like like am
Yep.
I gonna be like cracking a head, or like am I gonna be like looking through all listings just to find a decent price? I mean, those are like the negative parts about like anything that you're looking for, basically.
Yep. Definitely. And I think too, like the other thing about it that I always kind of think about is, you know, I'd rather see 17, 16, 17-year-old kids reselling sneakers than selling other things.
Yep,
Like
yep.
I was definitely selling other things in high school. And I just, like, I don't regret like the stuff that I did, but I also think, like, I see this now and think, damn,
Yeah.
I wish I had that 16, 17-year-old energy and a platform like a StockX or a GOAT to flip shoes on.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that like I'm trying to like, rip people off or hustle people, but like, it's crazy that you have the internet and all these platforms, whether it's sneakers or other things, that like just now people that, I was on the other side of it, right? Like when I grew up, I moved around a lot. So I'm from Sacramento originally. I lived in Oregon in a few different cities, Roseburg, Salem. Then I lived in Colorado, and like a lot of places didn't have access to the cool shoes, right? Like I might be able to go to the mall and find something, but like it wasn't like I could see all the stuff that was out there when I went to the mall. That's why East Bay catalogs were so important to us as like me and my siblings. But like now the internet, you can see everything. So like, we see it in the Discord a lot where there's people helping each other out all the time. There's plenty of people that can't just go to a local spot and pick something up. There's plenty of people that may never even have a chance to get a lot of these like crazier releases or even just the regular stuff at this point. But because you have a platform like a StockX or a GOAT, there's that negotiating factor that can kind of happen there, and you can maybe get something that you wouldn't have been able to get otherwise. So
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it has its good and bad parts. So yeah, to each his own. So on a lighter note, Nick, a nice segue. We can talk about sneaker history. So if you are solely responsible for creating sneaker history, the podcast, the YouTube page, and also the Discord that provided informative happenings in the sneaker culture through storytelling. How did that all first started for you?
so I think the idea for sneaker history has kind of always been just a way for me. I've always wanted to do like, almost like documenting sneakers and create like coffee table books and that kind of thing. So I can't remember when I first like got the domain and started down that path, but it wasn't until like 2015 that I actually did anything with it, because I was always working with other brands or for other companies. So one of the things that was, I guess, always a little bit frustrating to me is, when you work for a Finish Line or an East Bay or even a Complex, right? Like to a certain extent, you have to be safe with the way you talk about things, right? Like I'm not a negative person, so I'm not going to tell you that a shoe sucks, even, like, okay, if a shoe sucks, whatever, like I don't need to talk about it if it sucks, right? But generally speaking, like when you're working for a brand, you have to kind of be nicely saying that something sucks to people that work for those brands. And that's always it's just a game that I don't really want to play. I like to buy a lot of shoes. It's funny because somebody actually just commented on my Instagram yesterday and was like, do you only buy shoes that suck? And I was like,
I saw that.
if you think so, I guess, like, I mean, I don't need to respond to that kind of comment, but it's so funny to me because it's like I buy and collect every type of shoe, every type of brand. Like me having a shoe is my connection to the brand, right? Like if I let's say, there's a shoe brand that's never been on any of the sneaker blogs, and I somehow meet that person, whether it's through LinkedIn or I'm at some, trade show, and I have that pair of shoes and I can say, oh, I got a pair of your guys' is this, that, and the other, and I wore it for this and I did this and that. They're going to be blown away because nobody else is thinking about their brand of shoe or their type of shoe. And so for me, like early on in like starting to work in sneakers, I just wanted to buy as many shoes as I could from as many different people, because on the other side, for the consumers, if you ever looked at my page, my Instagram, my blogs, you knew that I was going to compare experiences from all of these shoes. I wasn't just the guy that's like, if you're only talking about Nikes, like that doesn't help me, right? Like, no offense to, like, a lot of people only love Nikes, but like if you're a blogger, if you're a content creator and you're only talking about one specific brand, then you're just a commercial for that brand. It doesn't matter like what your opinion is, because you're only helping that one brand, and I don't mean that that's not a good way to do it. If you're super passionate about something, like I could be like Allen Iverson brand, like whatever, but like I just looked at it from like, look, I'm writing for these big media companies. I'm doing all this work in sneakers. I'm trying to like have the craziest diverse collection. So when I need to talk about a type of cushioning that existed 5 years ago from a running shoe that's now going to be a part of a basketball shoe, then you can know that, hey, I actually talked about this shoe back then. So let me reference it and say, this is why you want to hear my opinion. This is what makes me credible because I had this experience. And now I'm going to share this new experience with you. So that kind of was my approach to sneakers, as I started to work in sneakers and it became my like livelihood. With sneaker history, it was like my place to talk about all those things on the blog and not have to worry about who was going to see it. And with, let's say at Complex, for instance, you do this is the best list of the year, right? Top 20 shoes of the year, top 50 shoes of the year, whatever. There's a lot of negotiating that happens with that, with the people that are creating the list, but also you're always thinking about, well, Nike paid the advertising team, $5 million to promote the Air Max whatever this year or whatnot. So you can't just be like, that shoe can't be on the list, that shoe sucks. You have to at least take that into consideration. That's just how journalism works, unfortunately, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're either getting paid to write or you're struggling. So the big businesses always have to play that game of like making sure that they're safe and you see it with a lot of the big companies now, right? Like you see, if you look at, and this is not, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way. It's just it's a way of doing business. If you look at a Bleacher Report or, a Complex or one of those big media outlets or even ESPN now with the Undefeated, any of the sneaker content is very much positioned in a positive light for whatever brand they're talking about. It's rare that they would, be brutally honest about a particular shoe or a particular player or something, unless that situation is going to move into the past for that brand they're talking about. And for me, I just didn't want to have to think about that. Like I wanted to be able to say, look, I've had my dream job 10 times and each time it ended up sucking for some reason. So I left it. And like, that's hard to that's hard for people to understand, because why would you walk away from, Soul Collector? Why would you walk away from Complex, from East Bay, like everything has its reasons. And for me, always wanting to kind of put out my own opinion, but also like prioritize educating people and inspiring people to be a part of the footwear industry, as opposed to saying like, cool, this Nike shoe is the best ever, buy it from me, when like I don't really feel that way. The brands and the retailers have to say that, like you have to say this is the shoe to buy. And a lot of times the brands do make better product each year. That's the beauty of it. But like sometimes they don't. And I'd rather be able to have my own little place on the internet to say that stuff that doesn't necessarily sit well with, other people. And they know that I'm coming at it from a respectful way. Like I'm never trying to tear somebody down. Like if anything, I'm trying to write something to reach the person, to have a conversation about it so we can support each other to make it better in the next time around. Right. So you can't really take that approach if you're Complex, or if you're, Bleacher Report or Finish Line, because there's always money transacting around each of those things. If you're at Finish Line, it's product that you're buying from a brand. If it doesn't sell well and you say it sucks, the brand's like, well, why would we sell you this? Because you said it sucked the last time. If you're at Complex and you say, this particular release is terrible, then, they're going to say, well, why would we give you this next release to talk about if you didn't like the last one? And, like all that stuff is great. And you kind of play that game and you learn how it works. And then you kind of realize, I just want to talk about sneakers. I just want to talk to real people. I just want to be like, kind of just like, maybe it's old school, but like it feels like the Soul Collector magazines and the forums, and like all the just genuine people that are like as crazy about sneakers as I am. And we can talk about random shoes. And, a majority of people, like going back to StockX, a majority of people that shop on StockX, they would not be able to have conversations about a lot of the shoes that we talk about in the Discord.
Nope.
And so like sneaker history is really just that for me. It's a place where if I want to go off on a random shoe, maybe it's a shoe that everybody in the community knows. Maybe it's just a shoe that I've been obsessed with. And maybe I can help somebody understand, like, this is a crazy shoe. Maybe you should check it out, and that's kind of where it started and kind of how it evolved into, the Discord and the podcast, and kind of to the point that I made earlier, like having the podcast and being able to like get to know people more through like me getting to know people, and then them getting to know me better because they get to listen to me and hear really what I'm about. It also has allowed me to like support so many other people. There's so many people doing cool shit in our Discord, yourself included. Like now you have this little group of people that's going to support every episode because they want to support you, because you're a part of this community. And like that's the most beautiful thing I could ever imagine coming from me being, a sneakerhead.
That's dope. Yeah, and another thing I want to point out too, your YouTubes and your podcast with shout out to, I have to give them their flowers. Shout out to, to Rohit. Congratulations on being a dad. Robbie and Mike. Those are, the main core of the podcast and your YouTube. I think it's important that you guys have that cohesiveness, and you guys can just bounce off any ideas and any topic. And the nice thing about you guys is that it just flows without any, like, like there's no like no awkwardness. It just flows very eloquently. Like it's nice to hear people's perspectives, which is very important, and also people's stories, which is what we like to listen to. I think the story concepts and the topics that you guys talk about, those are great, because there are certain things that we didn't know, that there's like a background story that you're very, that everyone, like, you guys are very knowledgeable of, and your opinions, which we respect. And everybody agrees to disagree, and so on and so forth. So I think part of that cohesiveness and that uniqueness that you guys have makes your podcast and your YouTube different from the rest. So just want to let you guys know that.
Yeah, thanks, man. Absolutely, Robbie, really kind of, we started talking through social media, years ago, and I think I think I might have just went to StockX when we started talking, and at that time I wasn't really trying to do much with sneaker history because I didn't want it to be like a conflict of interest, and I wanted to be respectful of the people that were, putting food on my table,
Hmm.
Um, so for a long time, like he, just kind of was low key about it, and like would check in and be like, "Hey, do you want me to write? Do you want me to do some stuff for you?" Blah blah blah. And then eventually, like I was like, "Yeah, just log into the site, start doing your thing, and I'll try to help edit and like read through and give you pointers." And that's kind of always my goal, is to just like help people kind of find their way into it. Like I think there's tons of people that would love to work at a Nike or an Adidas, and I think those guys, it kind of started with Robbie, and then Mike and Rowett kind of came on when we started the podcast, and it really just became an escape for us all through the pandemic too. Like we were trying to figure out how to do the podcast thing, and changing platforms and trying different microphones and different settings and all that stuff. Um, but then when the pandemic hit, it was like, wow, this is like kind of our only real social interaction. We're all stuck at home, trying to, not get sick. So um, that's actually like the most like, it's such a crazy, beautiful thing, because that's how we all met everybody. Like that's how the Discord started. That's how we all started connecting. And it's so weird to think about how you've got this crazy thing, COVID, taking lives from people, and yet like it's honestly like kind of sort of the best thing that's happened to like the sneaker history community, because we all got to know each other on such a different level, and we were all like an escape for each other in a way, right? It was like everybody that was listening to the podcast was listening, so they didn't have to deal with you know what was going on outside, and we were recording because we were like, we're not trying to deal with what's going on out there in the
Exactly.
real world.
Yes, yes.
So it just was this, all this kind of build up to get to this point. And I think with the community and with Mike and Rowett, and everybody kind of creating a little bit of a different approach to the way they like talk about sneakers, on the podcast and on the YouTube videos and stuff. And it's just cool. We've kind of found a way for everybody to kind of find a little unique take and a little unique position. And really it's just like all about respect. It's rare that we ever are negative about anything. Yeah, we're going to talk some shit every once in a while, but like generally speaking, we're real respectful of each other, and we're respectful of the brands, and respectful of the people that are working behind the brands. Cause that's kind of, for me, is like the core belief for me when it comes to sneakers is, yeah, like you might see a product and think it's shit, but there's 30 people that worked on that shit product, and maybe they didn't have the choice. Maybe somebody above them said, you
Hmm.
can't change this. And if I'm shitting on the product and that person sees me shitting on the product in whatever way on the internet, I don't want to feel like an asshole, like I'm
Yeah.
not that person. So I always keep that in mind. And, it's all that stuff that happens, and all the stuff that people do is really challenging. The jobs that people do to make these shoes, we all think we could do the best job possible and make it all perfect, but there are so many things and so many hoops you got to jump through, and people you got to make happy when you're working for a brand or a retailer, that it's like kind of goes back to me with the blog and the podcast, and like having a place where we can all talk and say what we want, but we all know that we're here to make it a better experience for everyone, right? We're here to make sneakers enjoyable, even when we all get fucking L's on the sneakers app every day,
That's the funny part. Yeah, like every Saturday, everybody's ready. Everybody's ready. You
Yeah.
ready for these L's, guys? Once in a blue moon, you get a dub from like,
Yeah.
some, just like not even that the most common people, but just like once in a while, it's nice to hear like, oh, you got a dub. That's cool.
Yep.
I just recently, like, I had exclusive access on those Sakai waffles, the fragments, and shout out to the homie Josh from South Dakota. He hit me up on the DM, like, hey man, like if you because I shouted out like, hey, like, I got exclusive access, you guys want it, just let
Yeah.
me know. And then he messaged me like, hey, like, do you still got it? Like, yeah, like, let me give me your address, your size, you know, and then, send I paid for it, and he Venmo me back. It was cool. And it's funny, it's like it's still pending. It's crazy. Like, I never knew, like, and I was updating him too. I wasn't trying to sound like I'm ripping him off. Like, hey, like, I'm just
Yeah.
letting you know, like, I still haven't got anything yet, but if anything, they refund me, I'll let you know, that kind of thing. So
Yep.
yeah. So my very last question for you, Nick, and I appreciate your time tonight. Um, so the bread and butter of the sneaker history, community is the Discord. So the sneaker history Discord is one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best Discords I've ever been a part of. We've all been through different walks of life with sharing the same passion of sneakers. Um what what how- wh- what does this mean to you, or how does it mean to you when you've seen this grow from the very beginning to now it's being so cohesive and a caring community?
I mean, it's like it's the best thing that could come from sneakers for me. I think you know, aside from COVID, like there's, 150, 200 people in there, and there's probably 50 of them that would give you a place to sleep if you were driving through, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
to me that's like amazing. Like I would love to be able to see all these folks in here, getting to know each other and meeting each other in person, cuz like at the end of the day, like sneakers is just a thing that brings us together.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can learn so much from being around other people, and it's just a crazy diverse group of people too. And although we could use some more females in there, definitely need some female energy in the Discord, but like
Mm-hmm.
for a bunch of dudes primarily, like there's just people from all different walks of life, all different places. You got people in Australia, you got people in Hong Kong, you got people in London, you've got, like, it's just wild to see how far it's grown without like doing anything too crazy. We don't, I mean, we post on social occasionally, but we really just started doing that. And I think the best thing about it is just being able to think about like how once we get to a point where everybody feels safe and can travel and get to know these people, you could literally go to some other city and go see all the sneaker stores because there's this group of people that would put you up, feed you, and like they would do it for you and you would do it for them if they came to your town. And that to me is like, it's like that's like just such a beautiful thing. I can't imagine anything better than that, and like just like seeing all these people get together for random things. I saw somebody, I think Pete was saying, hey, let's do like a golf trip with some of the guys in like Denver and Kansas City, and it's like that's so cool, like, and it's like, eventually like sneakers is kind of interesting because yeah, it brings us all together. It's what we all talk about. But at the end of the day, like it's almost like not the thing we talk about once we get to know each other, right? Like we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna go get some good food. We're gonna go, you know, see some, go to experience something, go to, Six Flags or like, whatever that is. And like sneakers is just like the kind of like the entry point, the door that opens to get us to talk to each other and get to know each other and learn different things from people. So that's what I love about it the most, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like, shout out, like, even like there's cool, like, there's a monthly like Zoom meet, like a Zoom like hangout, and there's shout out to Greg. He does a cool trivia like month where he has like these random like questionnaires, and he'll have like a top 10 of the week kind of thing. It's like it's a nice, like you were saying, it's a nice escape from what you're currently doing. A lot of us work from home. I'm sure everyone, if not everyone, is working from home or at the office. It's a nice escape from what you're going through, or you don't know what that person is going through. Maybe a lot of people use sneakers, or that Discord as an outlet for them to just to vent out, or like just to be at peace, or just being comfortable with everybody. And it's great, man. Like, i've I've met like a lot of people, um and especially like that there's like, yeah, there's a thread called the dad club.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's cool, it's awesome, like seeing like sneaker communities, like kids, like, oh, first day of school, and I see Keith and Todd like posting their kids, like, hey, my kid's going the first day of school. And then like for
Yeah.
me, I want to be, I want to show my kid off too, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
then it's like, oh man, like your kid looks like you, and like you're dressing them up and in sneakers. That's like my daughter kind of thing. It's funny, like, because we all think alike kind of thing, like, and it all gravitates to like sneakers at the end
Yeah.
of the day. It may be just rubber and some strings, but there's more into sneakers. It's talking about life, and it's just cool like categories. And thank you again, like you guys blessed me with a pair of the omnis a couple months
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
So I wanted to pay it back. I gifted, I think you guys did like a quarterly meeting a couple months ago. I think, and it was like Andrew from New Jersey, like he won like a mystery pair. So I was talking to Greg, like, yeah, I got these pair of like Harachis, like the Fab Five Harachis, and he couldn't
Nice.
believe it. I bought this pair of Harachi, the Fab Five colorway at Marshalls for $23,
That's
and
so
it had
awesome.
it had the Marshalls tag, and I'm sure you've probably seen it in the pickup page. So I gifted Andrew that, hey, enjoy these, and then like, hey, like look at where I got them from, and then he wore them like the next day, like, dude, like I can't believe like you bought it at freaking Marshalls for $23. I mean, the only bad thing about it, they had no insoles, but I'm sure he was able to find a pair to put them in.
Yeah.
It's just that feeling of just giving back, paying it forward. And it's great, man. Like it's just gonna be even better, that the community will just get bigger and stronger, and very harmonious and cohesive. So I'm looking forward to the things that you guys are doing in the near coming future.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. I think that's definitely one of the things we want to do, like, more within the community, but we also want to try to like figure out a way this year to, do like a shoe drive,
Yeah,
for other people outside the community, because collectively, it's like we all got lots of shoes. We all got
yep.
shoes that we don't wear, that we don't need, and
Mm-hmm.
there's definitely people out there that need it. And I think that's such a cool thing. And even, it's almost like you have like another like 50 people or something out there looking for the stuff for you all of a sudden, because you're a
Mm-hmm.
part of this community. And I mean, not all of us are buying a ton of shoes like that, but like it's crazy because stuff like that happens where it's like somebody's going to see something that, for 23 bucks someplace that, might not mean anything to them, or they might not need,
Yeah, yeah.
but like somebody like, that shoe is, especially that shoe, that's a great example, because that shoe's worth a lot of money,
Yeah, yeah.
but a lot of emotion for a lot of people, because it's
Mm-hmm.
such an important shoe.
Exactly.
So that's one of my favorite things too, is, thanks for doing that, and thanks for being a part of it,
Of
because
course.
it really, it means a lot to have so many people that are so selfless in there, because that's what makes it so great, man.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for coming on. And if you want to just plug in, sneaker history, where can they join the Discord?
Just go to add sneaker history on any of the social platforms, the link in any of the bios on Instagram or Twitter or wherever else, Facebook. You can get a link to basically anything we're doing on the YouTube channel, on the podcast, whatever, and then there'll be links to the Discord as well. So
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll definitely post it on the links as well on on this podcast and our YouTube page. All right,
awesome.
guys.
Thank you,
So
man.
this is episode 43. Thank you so much, Nick, for coming on tonight. It's been great. Thank you again for your time and sharing these stories, and I really appreciate it.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
All right, guys. Episode 43. Have a good night, guys.